All right, everybody, are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation's 160th anniversary commemorations for the Battle of 3rd Winchester. So I'm going to be following up where Ranger Owens had left off his tour. His tour earlier was talking about the action out at Middle Field and even some of the action even further past that with the 6th Corps on the Berryville Pike. We'll be talking about the Huntsberry farm here, Crook's attack through this property, and eventually his attack on the rebel left over by the Redbud Run. So we're going to go from this site over to the Ohio Monument, and depending on how we're feeling, we might cross the Redbud Run, go see the Hackwood property where that attack would have happened, or where that attack would have been centered upon. So it's up to you guys. But without further ado, we'll begin the program now. So the Huntsberry house would be right behind where that white fence line is beyond me. The Huntsberry family, they are going to be the first European colonizers or European settlers of this region. They're going to, or not this region, but of this property right here. They're going to move from Germany to central Pennsylvania, and eventually from central Pennsylvania to this site that we're now standing on. They're going to move here in the early 1700s, so a few decades before the American Revolution is going to take off. And the Huntsberry family owned this property all the way up until 2009. They'll eventually build a house here, and the Huntsberry house stood until roughly about the mid-1900s. We're thinking around like the 60s, 70s, 80s is when it went down. But the Huntsberry family, at the time of the battle, the property is going to be owned by Jacob Huntsberry. He is married, so he's got his wife, 9 other family members who are living here on the property with him, as well as 8 enslaved workers here on this site. The property will be vastly different than what we see right here in terms of the structures. The Huntsberry house would have been standing, like I said, beyond that white fence line. You're also going to have a barn. You're going to have you're going to have a tenant house closer to the Redbud Run, some enslaved quarters around the property as well. They would have been growing wheat, oats, corn right here, so a few different growing operations on this property. The Huntsberry family, we do not actually have any photographs of what the house looked like, at least no period photographs. We don't have any accounts of what the Huntsberry family experienced here at the Battle of 3rd Winchester, so we don't know if they were here on the property, if they had withdrawn and fallen back into town with some of the rest of Winchester's population, so it's kind of a guess at this point. We do know that the Huntsberry family did have a son that served in the Confederate Army, though. He is going to end up serving through a few different cavalry regiments, and he'll find himself in the 39th Virginia Battalion of Cavalry. They will end up serving as Robert E. Lee's escorts throughout the war. So not here at the Battle of 3rd Winchester, but something significant when it comes to Civil War service on the property. When it comes to the Huntsberry farm on September 19th, 1864, during the Battle of 3rd Winchester, some of the first soldiers to set up a position here on the Huntsberry property is going to be Major General Fitzhugh Lee's cavalry. Major General Fitzhugh Lee, he is the nephew of famous Confederate General Robert E. Lee. If you're a student of the Civil War, I'm sure this is a pretty recognizable name for you guys. Fitzhugh Lee is a West Point graduate, class of 1856, and he's going to serve before the American Civil War. He'll serve down in Texas under the command of Albert Sidney Johnston. It's a pretty significant officer to serve under. By the time the Civil War begins, Albert Sidney Johnston is considered to be the single most experienced general on the Confederate Army. And he will eventually be mortally wounded, leading the Army of Mississippi at the Battle of Shiloh, April 6, 1862. That creates a massive lull in leadership out west, but not about Johnston. We're talking about Lee right now. Major General Fitzhugh Lee, he's going to lead a brigade of cavalry throughout the Civil War. He'll lead a brigade successfully throughout the Maryland campaign. His brigade will spearhead Confederate General Stonewall Jackson's flank attack at the Battle of Chancellorsville in May of 1863. Are we okay, sir?
Care give out?
We okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If you need anything from me, feel free to raise your hand or to shout out and interrupt me. There is no problem with that, everybody. If anyone needs water or something as well, I'm not sure if we have any rangers here, but we might have to be sending somebody down back to the visitor center. But Major General Fitzhugh Lee, by the time he is at this battlefield here, he is in command of an entire corps of Confederate cavalry. And his men are going to be spread pretty significantly throughout the line during this battle. He'll have some men operating on the Confederate right, some men operating a few miles north of here opposite of Locks Ford on the far Confederate left, and he will send a division of cavalry right here to this property to hold the Huntsberry farm on the immediate left of the Confederate infantry. The main Confederate battle line is in that direction. It's going to run from a north-south direction on the southern edge of Red Bud Run. So when you have William Wickham's division operating right here on the Huntsberry farm, they're going to position themselves perpendicularly across middle field. So we kind of think about the Confederate battle line here is really in the shape of an L. The main infantry lines are out south of Red Bud Run, and you have 3 units operating right here at the Huntsberry farm. That is going to be Major Breathitt's horse artillery, William Payne's cavalry, and Tom Munford's cavalry brigades. The 2 cavalry brigades will set up on either side of the battery right here. They will also send sharpshooters down into those slopes in the field that you see down on the other side of this fence line, and they're going to hold at bay many of the Union soldiers who will try to cross over the Red Bud Run during the early morning action at the Battle of 3rd Winchester.
Hey, Mike,
Yes?
could the sharpshooters, were those trees there? Could the sharpshooters
The trees-
see the middle field?
So the trees would have been right there. And in fact, that ends up becoming pretty important for when Major Breathitt sets up his horse artillery, because they're not really able to see right across the Red Bud Run. Now, it would have been lighter foliage than what we have today, so you'd see pockets of land, but for the most part, they're actually sighting their cannons from sound. So that wood line would have been there. I'm not sure if those trees that are a little bit closer to us, those smaller trees, would have been right there. That is roughly where those sharpshooters would have been positioned, though.
Okay.
And by the way, going back to Major General Fitzhugh Lee, he will end up serving as the consul to Havana during the battleship Maine crisis. He will serve as a major general in the United States Army during the Spanish-American War, governor of Virginia, so he had a pretty extensive career after the Civil War. But like I said, he'll send 3 units to this property. That's going to be Payne's brigade, Mumford's brigade, and Major James Breathitt's horse artillery. Major Breathitt, he's going to position his guns right where we have these guns here today. He has 6 to 7 3-inch ordnance rifles here on this property, and they are firing perpendicularly across the Red Bud Run into the area of middle field. So when the battle starts off, I won't get into that real quick. I'll get into that afterwards. By the way, Major Breathitt, he is going to see significant service in the Army of Northern Virginia throughout the war. By the end of the war, Robert E. Lee says he is the hardest fighting artillerist in the entire conflict. So that is some pretty high praise to receive right there. And by the way, he is from West Virginia. He's from Bath, Virginia, which is today Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. So this is a local officer right here at this battlefield.
Mike, what was his job before the war?
He went to University of Maryland Medical School, so I'm assuming he was probably a doctor,
The man
yes.
who became an expert at killing people was a doctor.
The irony is right there, definitely.
So much for first do no harm. Yeah.
The first Union soldiers to operate on the north side of the Red Bud Run, right here in this area of the Huntsberry farm, is going to be the 9th Connecticut Infantry. The 9th Connecticut Infantry is known as Connecticut's Irish Regiment. They're raised in the county of New Haven, Connecticut, pizza capital of the world. If you guys go visit that today. And the 9th Connecticut will see extensive service with the 19th Corps down on the coast of Mississippi, in Louisiana, throughout the Vicksburg campaign. In fact, when Ulysses S. Grant is planning to bypass the rebel guns at Vicksburg, he's planning to dig a canal through DeSoto Point in Louisiana. It's the 9th Connecticut Infantry who are primarily digging that trench right there, digging that canal. And they are going to be exposed to heat waves out there. It's going to also be exposed to a lot of insects, mosquitoes that will spread around diseases throughout the ranks. By the time that they are here at the Battle of 3rd Winchester on September 19th, 1864, the 9th Connecticut Infantry are just weeks out from their terms of enlistments from expiring. So they're not necessarily the most motivated men on the battlefield here. They will be ordered to cross the Red Bud Run a little east of us here, and they will be ordered to basically protect the left or the right flank of the 19th Corps as they drive through the first woods and through the middle fields against Gordon's division. Now, like I'd said, the 9th Connecticut, they're not the most motivated troops out here in the Union Army. So when the 19th Corps pushes off forward, they're going to stay back. They're actually not going to move forward with the 19th Corps. And this leaves the 19th Corps, their right flank, entirely high and dry exposed. And that is going to allow Major Breathitt's horse artillery right here to rain shot and shell across the Red Bud Run into middle field, into the first woods, and they are going to wreak havoc throughout the 19th Corps' ranks. This is said to be a murderous fire, and like we were saying with Steve, they're going to be aiming these guns with the sight of with sound, because that tree line is still over there during the time of battle, so they're going to have to fire through those trees and such. And like I said, this battery is going to wreak havoc in the 19th Corps' flank as they're marching through this position. Gives you a good idea of where we are. We're right here in front of this battery. This is going to be the Red Bud Run south of us, and then this is the 19th Corps. They're pushing through the middle field with the Breathitt battery bringing their artillery in that position. Now, as the 19th Corps is pushing through the middle field, even further south of them, the 6th Corps is pushing on the Berryville Pike. They're going to fight to a standstill against Jubal Early's vaunted Army of the Valley veterans. And they'll fight to a standstill. There's a massive lull in the action. At that point, General Sheridan is going to call up his last reserves, the Army of West Virginia, which is relatively a corps-sized army. They're a corps-sized unit. They're referred to as the Army of West Virginia, but you'll also see them referred to as the 8th Corps sometimes within different maps and such. And the 8th Corps, they're sitting back on the eastern side of the Opequon Creek at this point. They are called up to the front, and Sheridan's calling up George Crook, his Army of West Virginia. This is the man who is leading that unit. This is going to be Philip Sheridan's West Point roommate. So he's calling up on some pretty reliable reserves. George Crook is an Ohio man. He is going to go serve at, or he's going to go attend West Point. Like I'd mentioned, he's roommates with Sheridan. And by the time he is here at this battlefield, he is in command of a pretty straggler unit known as the Army of West Virginia. These guys are made up of Ohioans, West Virginians. A lot of them are raised in the Kanawha Valley of Virginia. And by the time they're here at this battlefield, they have a strange reputation throughout the Army. They're referred to as the Mountain Creepers, a name that I might be throwing out a few times here today. And by this time, they had seen a significant action throughout the Shenandoah Valley. Compared to the 6th Corps, who'd seen action in the Army of the Potomac, the 19th Corps, who saw action throughout Louisiana and Mississippi in the Bayou Teche campaign, Vicksburg campaign, and such. But for the Army of West Virginia, these are some of the only Union soldiers on this battlefield who had actually served in the Shenandoah Valley before this. They would have fought, some of those units would have fought at the Battle of First Kernstown, some of them would have fought at the Battle of Port Republic, some of these units also would have fought at the Battle of Cross Keys, and at the Battle of Second Kernstown, the Army of West Virginia is routed from the battlefield. This creates a massive stain in their reputation. So by the time that they are marching to the battlefield here, or to this portion of the battlefield, they are looking for revenge, kind of. They're looking to make up for those prior losses. And on top of that, they're looking to wipe out Winchester. That's the phrase that's riding through the ranks of the Army of West Virginia. They are going to wipe out Winchester in retaliation for their defeat at Kernstown, which is just south of Winchester, in late July of 1864.
Open until 4 p.m. every day.
What was that?
Open until 4 p.m. Fridays.
Yes, open till 4 p.m. Go check out Kernstown, get a guided tour over there. George Crook, when he is ordered to come to the front, he initially wants to go position on the Union right. His idea is maybe he'll push in the Union right and will cut off Jubal Early's retreat route through Winchester. Sheridan has different plans for George Crook, though. He's going to send the Army of West Virginia to the right of the 19th Corps, basically the right of the Union infantry's positions. The Army of West Virginia, they are going to straddle the Red Bud Run as they approach this part of the battlefield. So at this point, Crook's going to split his command into 2 divisions. He'll have Joseph Thoburn's division on the south side of Red Bud Run. They're going to drive right in the same direction that the 19th Corps would have been fighting in. They're on the immediate right flank of the 19th Corps. Meanwhile, Crook is going to lead Isaac Duval's division to the north side of the Red Bud Run. They're going to cross a little bit east of here, and they're going to march right through this property en route to try and crush the rebel left, which is on the other side of the Red Bud Run from here. Now, it's important to remember what's going on north of here. So a few miles north of here is Locks Ford, the crossing on the Opequon Creek. That is where you have a few thousand federal cavalrymen are massing up over there. They're not unopposed, though. They're going to be fighting against General Gabriel Wharton's division of Virginia Mountaineers. This is also going to include a few different brigades of cavalry, an artillery battalion, and they're all under the command of John C. Breckinridge. I forgot to print a picture off here, but John C. Breckinridge, ex-Vice President of the United States, so that's our first political figure that we're going to talk about right here on the battlefield. He is originally planning to hold a defense over on Locks Ford, except he is ordered to withdraw his position back to the main battle line. He is initially kind of throws away this order. Sandy Pendleton will go back to Breckinridge with direct orders from General Jubal Early, and not just orders, but a warning. If he does not withdraw his position from the locks forward, his entire force is going to be swallowed up by that massive, massive force of Union cavalry that is bearing down on them on the Opequon Creek. Federal cavalry will cross the Opequon Creek. Wharton's division, Breckinridge's men, they'll withdraw from their positions north. They'll follow the Valley Pike, and you're going to have the Federal cavalry following back them. They're following them behind. There'll be a few rearguard actions around like Rutherford's Farm, Stevenson's Depot area, Carter's Woods, where we have just preserved about 160 acres that will be soon opened up as part of the 2nd Winchester Battlefield Park, so something to look forward to. But they'll have a few fighting actions out there in that vicinity, and eventually Wharton's division will withdraw across the Redbud Run, and they will position in the reserve behind the main battle line. Keep that in mind while we're on the rest of this tour here, that you have Wharton's division moving back, positioning behind Gordon's men. At the same time, as the Federal cavalry are bearing up the Valley Pike in a southern direction, you're going to have Fitzhugh Lee. He's going to withdraw some of the Confederate soldiers of his command from the Huntsberry farm to deal with cavalry threats on the far right and that massive cavalry threat on the Valley Pike. So you're going to see Major Breathitt's horse artillery. They'll be repositioned from this part of the battlefield. Munford's cavalry will be repositioned from this part of the battlefield. And you have a few more stragglers from Colonel Payne's brigade that are still here. By the time you have Duval's division and Crook, they're marching as part of the Army of West Virginia through this property. They're going to clear out the last stragglers of Colonel Payne's brigade en route to the crossing on the Redbud Run, where they will crush the rebel left. So we are about to walk in the footsteps of Isaac Duval's division. So remember, when you're walking through these footsteps, you're walking through the same steps that Colonel Rutherford B. Hayes, future president, would have walked through. Another future president, William McKinley, walked through the same ground, and George Crook and Isaac Duval. So I forgot to mention him. Isaac Duval, he is in command of the division who's operating on the north side of Redbud Run. He is another local, officer at this battle. He's from the northern stretches of West Virginia, or what is today West Virginia. And he will go out, he'll explore the Oregon Trail before the Civil War. He will go ahead and take part in the California Gold Rush. He'll even take part in a failed insurrection out down in Cuba. He's captured, sent back to the United States, and by the time the Civil War begins, he will enlist on behalf of his national flag. So remember, we're walking the footsteps of Duval's division. Rutherford B. Hayes is going to be in the front. They're positioned in columns. So you have Hayes in the front, Daniel Johnson's brigade in the rear, and they're going to march in the same exact path that we're about to follow today. So whenever you guys are ready, you guys can follow me on over here. Is this available?